The Mind Robber, the second story of Doctor Who's sixth season, first broadcast in 6 parts from the 14th of September to the 12th of October 1968. Now, whenever I asked which classic story I should try and view next, this one was always in the top 5. People absolutely loved this story, and upon watching it through, I do see why people loved it. I do still have one small problem with the ending, but people have told me I'm being pedantic about it, but anyway. After escaping from their fiery fate by the lava and the volcanic eruptions at the end of The Dominators, the second Doctor, played by Patrick Troughton, and his companions, Jamie McCrimmon, played by Fraser Hines, and Zoe Heriot, played by Wendy Padbury, find the TARDIS damaged, and in order to make repairs, they need to get somewhere safe, because they obviously can't stay where all that fire and brimstone, so they end up somewhat outside of reality. And while outside, they seemingly find themselves in another dimension ruled over by a being known as the Master, played by Emrys Jones. Now, this isn't the Master. This isn't the one that was famously played by the likes of Roger Delgado, Anthony Ainley, and so forth. This guy is pretty much just a human who... He was a writer, and... his mind has been taken over by some sort of weird alien creatures, and anything he writes comes true, and he has basically managed to create an entire dimension based upon fictional characters, with a load of fictional characters and fictional creatures at his beck and call, including the likes of unicorns, robots, toy soldiers, Gulliver, played by Bernard Horsfall from Gulliver's Travels. Bernard Horsfall would later go on to have further roles in Doctor Who, including roles in The War Games, Planet of the Daleks, and The Deadly Assassin. Medusa, played briefly by Sue Pulford. Rapunzel, played by Christine Pirrie. Lancelot, played by John Greenwood. And Cyrano de Bergerac, played by David Cannon, as well as a group of children who seem to just be there to kind of jeer and play and have fun, but also make things more difficult. Now, the reason why he is so keen on capturing the Doctor and co. is because of the Master's advancing age. He knows that he won't be able to kind of rule over this dimension for very much longer. However, he knows that the Doctor is ageless, so he effectively wants the Doctor to take his place. And it's a race against time for the Doctor and his companions to escape, and ultimately escape from the land of fiction and make it back to reality. Also, one other that I forgot to mention is that they also have a fictional character named Carcass, who Zoe reveals was part of a comic series came around the year 2000, which I'm guessing is kind of funny because this story was broadcast in 1968, so presumably 2000 was the default year that seems far enough away that it could be called the future. Which is kind of funny. I mean, it's like Back to the Future with 2015. That seemed suitably far enough away that they could call that the future. Which, yeah. Now, apparently this story went through a ton of problems behind the scenes, like, well, I'm not going to say problems, but kind of setbacks and such that they had to deal with. For example, the original story, The Dominators, they had to cut that story by one serial, so instead they added it onto the beginning of The Mind Robber here, which it is kind of visible. I mean, for the first serial of this particular story, the dimension they're in just appears to be kind of a mist. And then later on, when that kind of mist clears, they finally build upon the dimensions. So it's fairly clear that the first episode is separate from the other 4. But at the same time, I don't think it subtracts too much. The other kind of big thing that they had problem behind the scenes was that shortly before filming episode 2, Fraser Hines sadly got a case of chickenpox quite badly at the time. So basically they had to replace him for one episode while filming, so he was briefly replaced by Hamish Wilson. And I do think that the way they went about replacing him, I do feel is kind of humorous in line with what Doctor Who is, which is the Doctor ends up briefly encountering Jamie inside of the maze of the land of fiction, and he his face appears to be blank, and the Doctor has to kind of rebuild his face, but because Fraser Hines isn't there, he ends up kind of getting it wrong. So for one episode, Jamie is now played by Hamish Wilson. Now, I don't know if they dubbed Fraser Hines on top of Hamish Wilson, or whether Hamish Wilson just has a voice similar to Fraser Hines, but I feel he did well for his one episode. I could believe that. He had all the Jamie mannerisms, and I think he did okay. Also, Minotaurs and a whole load of stuff that really does well. I mean, they managed to do some great stuff with these characters. I mean, Gulliver, played by Bernard Horsfall, he's the kind of person who you're never quite sure whether he's trying to help or hinder the characters, because he is established that he can only really speak in words from his own text. So just hear him talking with the characters and then trying to interpret things, I feel it kind of works. It also means for me that Gulliver's Travels is an older book than I thought it was. But then again, I only really know the Jack Black version of the film, so I'm not the best person to make the judge on that. But also, Rapunzel, I feel, is a nice kind of character. She does feel a little tacked on compared to some of the others, but I do like it. I also do like how they use Cyrano de Bergerac here. I mean, he doesn't do very much, but it does link it back to me to one of my personal favourite Doctor Who episodes, the 12th Doctor story, Robot of Sherwood, when the Doctor's having his sword fight with Robin Hood. He tells Clara that he's had a bit of practice, and he learned a lot from some of the great masters, including Errol Flynn and Cyrano de Bergerac. So I do like how it ties in. Now, I said I do have one small problem with this particular serial. It was at the end, and people have told me I was a little bit pedantic about it, but here it is. Okay, spoiler alert if you haven't yet seen the episode. If you haven't seen it, I'll just cut off the review here. I'll say it's good, go watch it. Anyway. The one problem I had that I was being a bit pedantic about is, at the end of the story, the Doctor is kind of fighting against the control of the Master, against the control of these alien creatures. Zoe and Jamie manage to get back to the Master's quarters, overload the machine, which allows the Doctor, the Master, and the two of them to escape. And then the land of fiction starts to crumble, and the Doctor says we just have to hope that when it does destroy itself, that we'll be transported back to our own reality. To which we then see the TARDIS start to reform, and then the credits roll. And I'm just left thinking, you couldn't just do a final shot to let us know they're safe, that they're back in the TARDIS. I mean, they do address this at the start of the invasion, show that they are safe, and they did make it back, but at the same time, I'm just left thinking, oh, come on! We see the land start to crumble. Are they still trapped there, or did they make it back inside the TARDIS? Come on! We just need one more scene! But then again, I guess they were restricted, and as I said, I am being pedantic with that. But from what people said about it, The Mind Robber, is it one of the great stories? Probably, yeah. I mean, I do have others that I'm sure I enjoy more. I mean, I'll admit I wasn't necessarily a big fan of The Invasion first time around, but I did come to like it. I think still my favourite classic story from Patrick Troughton's era is still Tomb of the Cybermen, but people said The Mind Robber is a great story, and yeah, I'd say it is. Definitely go and check it out if you get the chance. Anyway, will it be my next classic story? Well, once again, I have an idea, I have a plan, but I'll have to just wait and see. And until next time, see ya.